Alright, here we go. Solo, take one.
Hey. What's up guys, my name's Riggs, this is my channel. I play guitar, I travel, I do session work, and I make these videos. So if you enjoy this kind of stuff, be sure to hit the subscribe button, like this video if you enjoy it, and let me know any comments, critiques, questions, or anything you want to see in future videos down in the comments below. Today's video actually comes by request of a few people over on Instagram. I asked a question what different guitar players struggle with, and quite a few mentioned that they struggle with improvising or coming up with parts on the fly or soloing or that kind of thing. So I decided today, since it's all kind of wrapped around improvisation and coming up with your own ideas, to give you my 3 best tips for how to do this, how to do it live, how to do it in a studio context, and just how you can practice this and get better at it. So without further ado, like this video if you're enjoying it so far, and let's jump in. So the first thing that you need to know is that you're not going to be able to just magically pull a great solo out of nowhere, unless you are the 1% of the 1% of guitar players who is just a savant the first time you picked up the instrument. You probably know that you're going to have some sort of idea on what key you're playing in and kind of where the notes in said key are for you to be able to improvise. So I'm kind of making a base assumption that you're probably at least a late beginner phase of guitar player. So if that's the case, then you are probably familiar with the pentatonic scale. Penta means 5, and that means that there are 5 unique notes in the scale. Now for the intro track that I played at the beginning, it was all completely improvised, stakes and all, left them in there so that we can kind of break that down a little bit. But it was essentially in the key of D minor. So, if you know the key of D minor and you understand a little bit about guitar, then you may know that you can play the D minor pentatonic scale. And all of those notes will work really well in the key of D minor. Now, the progression that I play, it's maybe a little bit jazzier and has some more extended chords, but it's still nothing crazy. So, for the most part, I can just play in D minor the entire time. Now, one really cool trick for me is knowing the relative major, and I think this is super helpful. And if you know that basic pentatonic shape, you already have a good idea of what the relative major is. See, the relative major is only 3 half steps up from the relative minor. So you have a D here, D sharp, E, and F. And F is my relative major, which means that all of the notes that are in D minor pentatonic will also work in F major pentatonic. So I can play the same basically over both chords, and I'll prove that to you. Now if I play an F major, none of those notes stick out as bad or wrong. So since I know that I can kind of root this solo around D minor or F major. Now, if you're not a super experienced guitar player, this may not help you because you may not know D minor or F major that well. But again, if you just know the pentatonic shape, then that will get you a long way. A lot of my improvisation is not necessarily based on a ton of different crazy notes or runs, but kind of making the most of the pentatonic. Now, since I know the pentatonic pretty well and I know those notes, I kind of know the blue notes that I can play, if you will. But that's probably for another lesson. And we need to go on to tip number 2. So the second tip is to play with dynamics, and that just means don't play the same thing over and over again. Using dynamics, I want to play low on the neck. I want to play higher on the neck. I want to pick quietly. I want to pick hard. And that kind of changes things up. That keeps the listener interested. You'll notice in the solo that I played at the beginning of the video that I was kind of all over the place. I started lower on the neck, and then I worked my way higher, did different things. I did fast parts, and I did things that were a little slower and melodic and way low on the neck. So that's the most important thing. Now, depending on how advanced you are as a player, you may know how to play in any given key, or in this case, D minor, all over the neck, and that's great. If you're more limited and you only know the pentatonic shape, then just think of it as starting a little bit lower on the lower strings. And then maybe as you work your way up, start picking harder. And then even doing some little fast runs that are just using that pentatonic shape. It doesn't have to be super complicated. And again, the most important thing is to have fun. But dynamics are super important. But they're probably not quite as important as number 3. So, if you can take whatever range you know and you can apply dynamics to that, the third thing that you should do, and the most important utilizing those two things, is create melodies. If you can create little nuggets, just little small melodic ideas in your solo that people can sing, or that are quotes of maybe the melody from the song, maybe a main part of the chorus, or whatever that may be, then you will have successfully created a great part. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. And while this does take a little bit of know-how with ear training, being able to pick out a melody and then quickly be able to play it without maybe having practiced it, this is a great skill to work on. Even little simple things like I did in the solo at the beginning of this video. I did this little riff. Or something to that effect. And then I also kind of played off of it. And that was basically just out of the minor pentatonic. I mean, it's a super simple little part, but it's catchy, right? So I'm using dynamics. I'm using this kind of staccato bum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum melodic playing to create a riff that people would hopefully walk away singing or remember. And that's the most important thing you can do in your improvisation. Even if you can't play crazy fast stuff and you can't stream together and play through all of these crazy jazz arpeggios or whatever it may be, you can at least create a few note melody. You can do something like I just played, or you could do something even simpler. You could make it 3 notes. You can make it 2 notes. Or whatever that is. If you can create a little moment like that, people are going to be just as impressed by that as they are some really fast, sweet-picked arpeggio or some crazy tapping sequence. So if you can do all 3 of those things, I think that you can make better improvisations. And this will help you in a ton of ways as a guitar player. This will help you write better solos. This will help you be a better performer live. This will help you come up with ideas that maybe you wouldn't have normally had because you just decided to go for it in the moment. And this will also make you great at writing parts in the studio. If you can just play along with something while you're listening back to a track and pull out these ideas, then you'll be all the better for it. Again, I can't stress enough how important melody is. And if you can play with dynamics, it doesn't matter if you have the entire neck memorized. But with that said, I think it is very important to know so you can make the most of this instrument. While it's not the easiest thing to do, I think you can pretty easily come up with a good method for remembering at least a basic idea of where things are. Like I talked about with major and minor pentatonic, just little tricks like that that'll start to click over time. And I can't stress enough, but there's no substitute for practice. So those are my 3 tips. I hope that was helpful. If they were, please like this video, subscribe down below and hit the bell icon if you want to be notified when new videos are going live. And let me know any of your thoughts, comments, criticisms, questions down in the comments below. Feel free to share this with friends, and if you have any business inquiries or you're interested in taking private lessons or anything like that, be sure to reach out in the contact form on my website, and I'll have that linked down below as well. If you're a Kemper user, I've got Kemper Profiles of this amp up on my website now, and that's also linked in the description. Anything that comes from that helps to support this channel and me making these videos. So that's all for this video, and I hope to see you guys in the next one.